Can Peyton Thorne have one of the best passing seasons in Auburn history?
Freezing temperatures are likely for several hours inland and a few hours closer to the coast.
Yes.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Hanging out with us today is Justin Hokanson of AuburnLive.com and on 3. And I want to start things off before we get to Jarquez Hunter, what numbers he can have. Before I kind of touch on Jalen McLeod, can he hit double-digit sacks this season? Hoke, let's discuss Payton Thorne. I believe, and the bar is pretty low with all of this when you look at Auburn passing seasons historically. But I believe, Hoke, that Payton Thorne can have a top 3 season all time for passing yards for a quarterback. Your initial thoughts on that?
Off the top of my head, I don't know what the top 3 are.
Okay.
You got to help me out.
I can help you out with that. So Damian Craig in 97 threw for 32.77. The second best passing season ever in Auburn history in 2017 was Jarrett Stidham. He threw for just over 3,100. And then Cam Newton in 2010 obviously threw for 2,854. So a 3,000-yard passing season would do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible. Yeah, you're right. That speaks more to Auburn's, history of running the football and lack of prolific receivers and just kind of how it sort of played out over the decades. Yeah, I mean, I think in this day and age and the spread offense and what Hugh Freeze wants to do, try to go vertical, try to play with tempo. I think it's possible. I mean, that's a big year right off the bat, 3,000 yards. Even in today's college football, I mean, that's a really good year.
Yeah.
But, I mean, yeah, I don't think you're crazy for thinking Payton Thorne could go 27, 2,800, could try to approach that. I mean,
gets him in the conversation at least. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that's a crazy thought. I think touchdowns would be a lot harder to predict. Because it depends on red zone, production, and do they run the ball more there, and can guys make plays after the catch? And so there's a lot more maybe that goes into touchdowns, but I could see him racking up some yards. What was his best season off? I don't know. I'm putting you on the spot. I don't know what his best season at Michigan State was. What was that 11-1 season for Payton Thorne up there, yardage wise? But yeah.
Well, just for, last year he threw for 2,679, which to me is pretty that's one of the best passing seasons in Auburn history. If we were to do this, now is his down season. Last year, or 2 years ago, he threw for 3,240.
Yeah.
When they won 11 games.
Yeah, no, I think assuming he starts every game, assuming he plays. Now the one X factor is Robbie Ashford.
Totally.
In what his role is. But, I think even if Robbie plays a role, it's short yardage, it's maybe red zone, it's some different points on the field, but I don't think we anticipate Robbie getting drives, drive after drive in the SEC. I can see maybe Robbie getting some drives in the beginning, like against, UMass, maybe Samford getting some work in. But I think once the SEC play starts, I think Robbie will get plays. I don't think Robbie will get drives. So I don't necessarily think he'll greatly impact Peyton's ability to try to go to 2,800 plus yards. So yeah, I don't think it's crazy at all to think he can get there because of the style of the offense.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of an interesting point that you bring up with Robbie. It's like if we were at the end of the year and Robbie had, 800 yards, I think that'd be a successful season for Robbie, right? I think probably 400 or 500 would be on the ground, and then the rest would be through the air. And I may be underselling him. I don't know, but I just think most of Robbie's snaps, like you said, in short yardage situations, I think he's got the potential to take touches away from Jarquez Hunter or Damari Alston or Brian Batty or Jeremiah Cobb. I think a lot of that is going to be designed run stuff, and they'll pass out of it too. I hope. I think that would be beneficial for everyone on the field, on the Auburn side anyway. if they were going to pass it with Robbie as well. But I'm with you. I do think Robbie's going to have an impact, but I think he's going to limit some touches from the running backs, not necessarily Payton Thorne throughout the year.
Yeah, and I think the other factor is the defense. I don't think the defense is going to be, dominant by any means. I think they'll be okay. And so I think Auburn's going to have to score points. I don't think this is a team that's going to trot out there a top 4 defense in the league and be able to play to the defense or run the ball or things like that. I mean, I think they're going to have to score points in the SEC. I mean, especially you look at some of the teams on the schedule and I mean, not just Georgia and Alabama, but LSU with Jaden Daniels and Bobby Petrino at A&M and KJ Jefferson at Arkansas and like Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss and Jackson Dart coming back. Like everybody's scoring points. I mean, everybody's scoring points. So I think it's going to be a deal where they're going to go into games knowing, hey, we're probably going to have to score 28, 30 probably to win. I mean, there's going to be very few games where Auburn probably wins an SEC game, 21-7. That's not happening, I don't think. So
did you feel that way before fall camp? Because I feel less confident about the defense now than I did a month ago.
Yeah, same. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know that it's anything specific. I guess I've just got more data and have thought about it more. And, I guess you sort of see who's out there along that defensive line, front 7, and you kind of get a better look at maybe who's out there. And I guess that's the additional data. And you're thinking, okay, I'm just not. For me, it's a depth issue. I think they've got some decent starters sprinkled in there, but I don't see the depth needed to be the kind of to be a really, really good defense in the SEC. You have to have 2 deep. You have to have 2 deep across the board. I'm not sure I see that. So I think they're going to be okay, but maybe they can be opportunistic. That might be their strength with Ron Roberts, maybe. But I think because of that, Peyton Thorne's going to have plenty of chances to be aggressive, throw the ball downfield, and try to, hit that 2,800 plus yard mark.
How important is a Shane Hooks getting 1,000 yards or a Jair Shorter getting close to that number? Or I don't think it would happen out of the slot, but a Jay Fair, Javaris Johnson getting to 1,000 yards? Or do you think they can get to that point by truly spreading the football around?
That's a good question. I think that, you listened to Hugh Freeze the other day say almost every year he's got a 1,000-yard receiver. He's got close to it. So, that certainly makes it think either his offense, creates that or it's necessary to get that.
Sure.
And then you look at the Auburn receivers, and I don't see a plethora of playmakers. So if they're going to be successful, I think it might take. I don't know if they've got a guy that can get to 1,000 or even get close. I don't know. You got to be consistent to do that. And even Shane Hooks, we heard, is not consistent yet. So, but I do think they need a guy. I think that's one of the things over the past few years that's hurt them is that it's just there's no rhyme or reason to how you're throwing the ball. And if you've got a couple of guys you think are playmakers, I think Hugh Freeze and Philip Montgomery will target them. I don't think they're just going to call the play and ignore a playmaker and call the play, which is what Harsin and them would do. I think they'll target a playmaker. So I think Hooks could get close. I think he could be in the ballpark. When I say in the ballpark, I could see Hooks finishing with 750, maybe 800, where you're like, hey, where at some point in the season, you're like, if things keep going that way, he could maybe knock on the door type deal, but he's got to be more consistent. Shorter is another one. His yards per catch is so good and such a he is fast, man, for his size. He's another guy that, if he gets enough catches at that yards per catch, the way they want to use him, he could rack up the yards pretty quick. Kind of agree with you. Out of the slot, probably going to be tough because those guys are going to be used in a way that I feel like is more possession than stretching the field. I think Hooks and Shorter are your best bets at trying to get that. Probably Hooks because he's pretty good after the catch too. So I think it'd be beneficial if one of those guys made a run at it. Yeah, I don't think Auburn's got the receiving core to have a bunch of guys with 400 yards. I'm not sure. I think they need a couple guys to step up and be studs.
I'm with you. And they may try to spread it around. I'm just not sold that that's the best thing to do at this point, but we will see. What kind of season can Jarquez Hunter have? We'll discuss in just a moment right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs make the best and most comfortable style shorts ever. They make you look good. They make you feel good. They've got this stretch khaki material that's designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and giving you that truly sculpted look. I've told y'all before, my wife loves when I wear my Bird Dogs. I think that's the best endorsement that you possibly could have. Also, that they're just so versatile. I went to the gym in mine earlier today. You can wear them out to dinner. You can do whatever you want in your Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. Enter promo code LockedOnCollege for a free white tech hat with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege or promo code LockedOnCollege for that free white tech hat. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. Justin Hokanson, our guest of AuburnLive.com. Jarquez Hunter, 1,200-yard rusher. Yay or nay? What say you?
I say no. No. And now I would have said in the spring, I might have said yes. But now I don't think so, because I think Damari Alston has come on enough that I think he's going to get a decent amount of carries that are going to affect Jarquez's ability to get to 1,200 yards.
Does he get to 1,000?
Do what?
Does he get to 1,000? I think you can make the argument that Auburn doesn't have a 1,000-yard rusher this year.
I know. I think my gut. I was thinking about this a couple of days ago. My gut is that Jarquez finishes in the 900s, and Damari finishes in the 800s, and that's kind of my gut. Maybe Jarquez is at 950, and his yards per carry is really good, and Damari is at. Well, I think his yards per carry will be about average. I think it'll come back down to earth a little bit from what you're used to seeing from Jarquez, which is 6+. He's going to be the guy. So I think Damari is the guy that's going to have the higher yards per carry, I think, and that sort of in that reserve role. But I could see Jarquez being in the 900s rushing and Damari being, at 800. And, combined, they kind of do, they get the work done. Batee could get, 400, something like that. And of course, we're assuming the offensive line lives up to the billing and all that, which I think they'll do a good job. So, and then even Jeremiah Cobb probably won't get much, but he'll get some. He might get a carry here or there. But I think Damari Alston's emergence is what will impact Jarquez not getting to 1,200. If Jarquez gets to 1,200 with the way Damari Alston's played and with the role Damari Alston's going to play, then Jarquez Hunter, that will be an amazing sign for this offense, because I think Alston's going to have a really good season. So if Hunter gets to 1,200, Alston's not going to be sitting over there. He's getting some carries. And so if Hunter does that, man, Auburn's going to be in great shape. But I think it's going to be a thing where Hunter's knocking on the door, but might not get there. But Alston's going to have 800, and those two combined are going to be, are going to have some serious production, maybe 15 total touchdowns type deal.
Well, and we could circle it back to the Robbie Ashford thing. He's going to run the ball a ton too. Yep. And so, there's just a lot of guys that are going to be getting carries on the ground. And so it almost would be a surprise if somebody were to get to 1,000 or in this case, 1,200 yards on the ground. But that doesn't necessarily mean the running game is going to be poor or bad. I just think there's going to be so many guys, and there's no reason to run Jarquez Hunter into the dirt this year, which I think is a great situation for Hugh Freeze.
Yeah. And you mentioned Ashford. That's a good point too. I don't know, I don't know with his role. We have to see kind of what we don't really know. The first 3 games are non-conference, so Robbie will get maybe more run than he normally would. We don't know for SEC play, okay, what's Robbie's role in an SEC game? What does the offense need to look like? And how many carries does Robbie get when every single possession matters? How many times are we throwing Robbie in to run and do that kind of stuff? But look, a handful of carries every game adds up, and it takes away opportunities for Jarquez and those guys. I would say if Robbie were the guy, I think Jarquez might have a better shot, because I think he'd have more opportunities at some running lanes and things like that. But I think Auburn doesn't get a 1,000-yard rusher, which is, man, they had that string every year going back to Ben Tate, and you had that run all the way, 1,000-yard rushers from Trey Mason and Cap and on. But then recently they've Tank didn't get there, I don't think, and so they've kind of struggled to get there. But I think this year will be a little different in that if they don't get there with a 1,000-yard rusher, I think it'll be okay. It won't be indicative of a poor rushing attack or even an average rushing attack the way maybe the past few years have. If they don't get there, I think there's a possibility that you have two guys that either one of them could have gotten there on their own. And so if they don't get there this year, it won't be indicative of necessarily a poor rushing attack.
Yeah. And I think Jarquez Hunter as a player will benefit from Damari Alston being that true 1B, which it seems like he's going to be. The interesting thing in this is Brian Batty, because you said 300 or 400 yards, and he may have the same amount receiving as he does rushing. I don't know. That may be a stretch. We'll see. But he looks so good running the football. And so he may be a guy that gets more touches than we realize. And when we saw him, or I guess we heard him, his first scrimmage, it sounds like he was the best looking running back in that first scrimmage. I didn't hear as many highlights from him in the second scrimmage, Hoke. Maybe you heard differently, but just how they're going to use him to complement Hunter and Alston is one of the things I'm looking forward to most about this offense.
Yeah, he's intriguing. I mean, I don't think anybody knows exactly. And 300-400 rushing might be overshooting it for him.
It might.
I think maybe it's 300, but I think his ability to pop the big run is what's going to help him. He's going to, he could have a few carries, but they're going to be 10 yards a pop, and those could really add up. Or he breaks off a 50-yarder against Sanford in a 40-yarder against New Mexico State, And so I think his big playability, but yeah, how they use him is one of the might be more intriguing than even Robbie. I think we kind of have an idea of what it'll look like with Robbie, change of pace or certain situations. Brian Batty is just more interesting because you've got two really capable running backs ahead of him, but he's so quick and so fast. You think about being able to use tempo and run on people. And then if you can start to tempo somebody and then be able to substitute Batty in with his speed, boy, I would hate to be a defender and be a little fatigued in the late third quarter. And all of a sudden Batty starts getting in there and you're like, I'm chasing this guy around. It could be difficult if he's used correctly. He could really make it hard on some teams that are getting a little tired, but so much is going to depend on how that first half goes to make those teams tired. But yeah, he's going to be super intriguing because you don't want to take Jarquez Hunter out of the game, and you don't want to take Damari Alston out of the game. That's two really good guys to try to make room for Batty and trying to get him worked in. So I'm just interested to see how that plays out in practical terms against Texas A&M and against Georgia. Will they really pull Hunter out and pull Alston out and go to Batty in some of these situations? I think they will. I think it's just going to be up to him to, when he gets those chances, make it pay, make it pop when he gets those opportunities. So that they can justify taking Jarquez Hunter or Damari Alston out of the game.
Who gets more touches per game? Robbie Ashford or Brian Batty?
Robbie. I'll go Robbie for now.
Okay.
Just because, I think he's more of I think Robbie's value at the quarterback position is greater than Batty's value at the running back position. I think Batty's got two guys ahead of him that can do a lot of what he can do. I mean, he's different. Batty's different. He's smaller and he can do some crazy things, but there's two guys ahead of him that are really good. Robbie, there's nobody like him at quarterback for Auburn.
You're right.
I think his value there gives Robbie an edge up and maybe getting more snaps. I mean, Robbie, look, he can even get in there and be used as a decoy, and he gets in there and they take a deep shot, or he gets in there and they run some kind of, and all eyes are on him and he does something that's not running the ball. There's ways to use him. So I would go Ashford right now.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Just asking the question for sure. All right. Does Auburn have an elite pass rusher, specifically Jalen McLeod? Can he record 10 sacks this season? We discuss next right here on Locked On Auburn. I want to encourage you to join the Locked On Auburn Discord. It's free. All you have to do is click the link in the episode description down below. Justin Hokanson of AuburnLive.com. When you look at Jalen McLeod, of course, the Jack linebacker that transferred from App State, what kind of year can he have? Can he be, I think Auburn's had 11 players with double-digit sack seasons. Can Jalen McLeod have that? because I almost think that he has to if Auburn is going to turn the corner and be what they want to be on defense, because I just don't see anybody else that you've got to look at in this front seven and say, we've got a game plan for you. I think McLeod is in unless Keldrick Falk really kind of hits the ground running a little even more than we're expecting him to as a true freshman, Hoke.
Yeah, my first gut reaction when you asked this was no, because just thinking through that jack position, how many times is he rushing? How much is he dropping back, being asked to drop back? I don't exactly know what his role will be in terms of like maybe a true defensive end that's pretty much coming after the quarterback constantly or has those opportunities. How much is he going to be playing in coverage that takes away some opportunities that could be a sack? But man, the more I think about it, I mean, you talk to people inside the program and they just rave about it. Like, they don't just say he's a really good player. They're like, he's a freak. He's special.
Yeah, it's like it takes them a second to gather themselves to be able to actually answer the question about him.
Yeah, I mean, high accolades. Yeah. Like this dude's got a motor and he's got abilities and leverage that can make him a tough. And so I think he can get there. I mean, you talk to him, he's so motivated. His mindset is awesome. And I think the guy's a pro in how he approaches it. And so he talked about, somebody asked him, what do you want to improve on before the season? And he was like, technique. Got to get my technique down. I mean, just the way he speaks and I think thinks, I think translates into production. Then you talk about how talented he is. There's a lot of great things that can come together to create a guy that goes out and gets double-digit sacks in the SEC. I think they're going to turn him loose a lot. I think they're going to need to. We know Ron Roberts wants to create turnovers and wants to wreak havoc. He's kind of unique in that defense. There's nobody else like him. And so I think it's absolutely possible he gets there. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if he will or not, but I could easily look up and see him having, 10.5 sacks this year. I really could.
Yeah. The last player in Auburn history to have 10 sacks was Jeff Holland in 2017. And that was a great year. That was a fun year. Can he have that type of level of impact? He kind of reminds me of Jeff Holland a little bit from a pass rusher standpoint, but like you said, we don't know how much he's going to be asked to drop back into coverage. I don't think that's necessarily his strength. He wasn't particularly great at that at App State, the little times that he was asked to do that. So I am curious to see what exactly that looks like. He had 6 sacks last year at App State, but sounds like he was the guy to block. Does Auburn have enough talent along the offensive front to draw attention away from McLeod? That's an interesting conversation. Like, is there ever a situation where you've got to circle Marcus Harris or circle Keldrick Falk or Steven Sings if they have 2 jacks on the field at the same time in that given situation? Elijah McAllister, it sounds like he had a really good scrimmage this past Saturday. So, I mean, to me, it's almost like, yes, I think Jalen McLeod has the talent to do it, but Ron Roberts' scheme and other players have to step up for him to get to double-digit sacks. And I don't think it's out of the question, Hoke.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Players like Jason Jones and Justin Rogers have got to step up to the plate,
sure,
and demand double teams. And that's how you get them, right? If one of those guys plays 2 yards in the backfield and forces the quarterback to move in the pocket, next thing you know, McLeod's in position to make a sack. And then I asked about coverages because I don't know in that defense, how often is McLeod at the line of scrimmage? Maybe he's not blitzing, but how often is he playing around the line of scrimmage where he could maybe get a cheap sack somewhere versus is every time he's coming, is it a blitz situation? Like, is every time he's coming, does he have an opportunity to be around the line when he's not necessarily blitzing, but can get a cheap sack here and there? That would be nice too. But you're right. Some of those guys are going to have to step up and create opportunities. He can't just be the guy trying to beat somebody, chase it down and in an otherwise clean pocket. Keldrick Falk's going to have to step up and make plays. A blitzing linebacker could force some things into his area. But I could see him getting to double-digit sacks. I can definitely see him being, his pressures being pretty high. I definitely think Jalen McLeod at minimum is going to be a guy that creates a ton of pressures, and then we'll see if other guys can clean it up. But yeah, I think who was it before Holland? I mean, do you have to go back to You have to go back to
let's
Grove.
see. D Ford was 2013.
D Ford,
That was the one right before that. Then Nick Fairley in 2010.
Oh gosh, both those got the W. I was thinking back to, I know Quentin Groves, I think, got there.
Quentin Groves has 10 in 06.
Yeah.
Kevin Green. So Nick Fairley has a record with 12. Kevin Green in 84, Craig Ogletree in 89, and Gary Walker in 94. They all have 11 with D Ford. Excuse me. D Ford has 11 as well. And then Gerald Robinson, all these guys have 10. Gerald Robinson in 85, Mike Pelton in 94, Antonio Coleman in 09, Reggie Torbor in 03, Jeff Holland in 17, and Quentin Groves in 16. So, I mean, those guys had some seasons. That's a list, man.
That's a good list. And it also shows how stupidly talented Nick Fairley was when he tried. To be a defensive tackle and have that many sacks like that is
monster.
That's remarkable. But yeah, I think McLeod can push it. We'll have to see kind of how the defense sets up and how much does Sings play? How much does McAllister play? Like you're saying, is there kind of a rotation early on, or is Sings the man and he's going to get the majority of the snaps? If he does, I think he's got a chance. If there's kind of a rotation across that whole defensive front, then that's gonna limit his chances, obviously.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this. So he rushed the passer last year 201 times and had 6 sacks, 8 quarterback hits, and 23 hurries. So not a bad pressure rate for sure. So hopefully he can keep that trend going. I think he'll have more pass rush snaps than that this year, but we'll see what that Jack rotation looks like. Hoke, how can people check out everything you guys got going on at Auburn Live these days?
Yeah, just go to auburnlive.com, subscribe. I think they started a deal, by the way, where if you subscribe, if you're a new customer, I think it's $1 for the first month. So it used to be like a free trial week. So if you're a new subscriber, go to auburnlive.com and you get your first month for $1, and then it just kicks into the normal rate. So that's a pretty sweet deal. That's for any new customer at any point from now on. You get that first month for $1. So it'd be crazy to not go give it a try for a month and be a part of the community and see how it goes. So yeah, auburnlive.com, man, we'd love to have you.
Yep. $1 for a month. That's totally worth it. It's totally worth it. Be sure to check out all my written work at auburndaily.com and follow me on socials at Zac Blackerby. We will see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.